Nutrition. What is food and why do we need it? Today, we're going to look at the carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids that make up the fuel of food. We're also going to list vitamins and give one source for each. Well, we might give more than one source in this lecture, but you should be able to give one source at the end of this lecture. And name one source each for calcium and iron. That should be pretty easy given that we'll give quite a few. This is part one of a two-part lecture on nutrition and the digestive system. First off, let's look at food as fuel. So if you want, you can go to myplate.gov where they will tell you what the recommended amounts of food are. You can then, if you want, go to various diet websites where they're going to tell you different amounts of food. And what you're going to see is that we're going to break things down into carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. You may remember these from the biomolecules lecture. We know that carbohydrates represent energy present in starches and sugars. And we saw how glycolysis breaks down sugars into simpler byproducts such as H2O and CO2, and in the process creates a lot of energy. Proteins are made of amino acids, and some of which the body cannot manufacture on its own. These are what we call essential amino acids, and we're not really going to get into that a lot today. Last up are lipids, which are the energy and cell membranes. We see lipids present as fats, and we've seen them in adipocytes earlier on when we looked at different tissues. Those are a type of connective tissue, remember. So this is all a matter of fuel. What is a calorie? Well, a calorie, or as it's actually called a kilocalorie, which is 1,000 calories, is the amount of energy needed to heat 1 milliliter of water by 1 degree Celsius. Gotta love that metric system. It puts a lot of things in same kind of units. So if you had 1 milliliter of water in front of you and you want to increase its temperature by 1 degree Celsius, that will take one of the calories on the back of your serving package. Burning calories is a chemical transformation from chemical bond energy present in those carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins into the heat and motion energy of movement. We could, of course, just burn things, and that's what we do when we make a calorimeter measure how many calories are present in food. And humans get calories from 4 types of macromolecules. We're going to focus on 3, as I'm going to explain. First off are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. You might remember that from the biomolecules lecture. They come in monosaccharides, such as glucose, disaccharides, such as sucrose, and polysaccharides, such as starch. Fiber is an indigestible type of carbohydrate, which can increase the water content of feces and absorb cholesterol in the digestive system. We'll look at fiber a little later on. It's a type of carbohydrate, but it's not a carbohydrate that you're going to use as fuel. Lipids are also used as a source of energy, primarily carbon and hydrogen in this molecule, and these can be triglycerides, fatty acids, and cholesterols. A saturated fatty acid is going to be a lipid that has all the possible hydrogens for its carbon backbone. An unsaturated one does not have as many hydrogens as would be possible because some of them are double bonds between carbons. And a polyunsaturated fatty acid has multiple double bonds at multiple different positions, which makes it unsaturated multiple times. There are omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. We're not going to get really in depth for those, but it's worth looking up and thinking about because it's not just energy with these lipids. Proteins. If I say it's not just energy with lipids, you know full well it's not just energy with proteins. These have carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, and they are used for so many different things in the body. You have amino acids, which make up polypeptides. We have things known as complete and incomplete proteins, which depends on whether or not they have essential or inessential amino acids. Essential amino acids are ones your body does not have a biochemical process to make on its own, so you have to find them in your diet. Thankfully, a well-balanced diet will contain all of the essential amino acids. You'll be just fine. They can be used as fuel. Your body tends to use proteins more for structure, which is why when you see someone bulking up, they're taking in protein, not carbohydrates. Why not carbohydrates? Well, the body does actually use carbohydrate backbones to build proteins, but it's faster to just take protein and use that to make muscle. When you see a runner getting ready for a race, you see them taking carbohydrates, not proteins. Why not a big steak before a race? Well, That's because we don't generally use proteins as fuel as much as we use carbohydrates as fuel. So proteins are not always used, but they can be. Nucleic acids are seldom used for fuel, but they technically can be. They are made up of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. We're talking DNA and RNA. And I don't know anyone who takes a big heaping tablespoon full of nucleic acids. This is generally something found only in trace amounts in your food, but they can be used for fuel. Fact is, any one of these biomolecules can be broken down in such a way that it enters the citric acid cycle and can be used to make energy. They are converted to CO2 and H2O. Byproducts of nitrogen and phosphorus will be needed to be made if you're using proteins or nucleic acids. So how are these digested? Well, we're going to look at the digestive organs. You will not need to memorize this table. It's not even in your book. But it's a cool table, and it does help put things in context. How carbohydrates are digested starting in the oral cavity and are going to be digested even further in the small intestine, both from enzymes from the pancreas and enzymes from the epithelial tissues of the small intestine. Proteins are digested mainly in the stomach, but also in the small intestine with enzymes from the pancreas and the epithelium. So you can see how different enzymes are used here, and the different enzymes have different exocrine glands. Nucleic acids are digested by pancreatic nucleases in the small intestine and by epithelial nucleases in the small intestine. And fats, well, they're not digested in the mouth, they're not digested in the stomach, they're digested in the small intestine by pancreatic lipase. And their absorption is something special because fatty acids don't dissolve well in your blood. But we'll look at that a little bit later. This is just kind of putting these macromolecules in the context of the system that we will be covering in later lectures. All right, let's move on to vitamins. A vitamin is, as quoted by Campbell Biology, an organic molecule required in the diet in very small amounts. Many vitamins serve as coenzymes or parts of coenzymes, and I'm not going to ask you to memorize this entire table. It is just a useful reference. So we're going to look at these one by one. Here we go, vitamin A, also known as beta-carotene. So vitamin A is converted through biological processing to retinol, which is converted then using NADPH to retinol, which is your vitamin A. The retinol, what it can do in the body is it shifts isomers when light hits it. Okay, why would we want that? Well, this is used in your retina because what happens is when light hits this, it changes shape. When it changes shape, your body can use this to send a signal through your optic nerve, and that allows you to know, hey, there's light present. Where do we get beta carotene? Well, anything that's really orange. So here we have some butternut squash, and here we have some sweet potatoes. And you're probably thinking carrots. You're also right. Carrots are orange, and they do have plenty of beta carotene. Not only that, but a lot of leafy greens actually have a good source of beta carotene. Vitamin A is not hard to find and not hard to get in your diet. It is, however, fat soluble. So if you start to overdose on beta carotene, you will end up turning slightly orange. Not spray tan orange, but you'll definitely turn a little colored. B vitamins. There are several B vitamins. This is not an extensive list here, and this also is not the list from your book. And you can see that these are all involved in metabolism in such a way that they are involved in energy. So you have thiamine is a coenzyme for removing CO2. When do we do that? Well, we do that as part of processing of pyruvate. Riboflavin is a component of FAD. You may remember FAD from the citric acid cycle. Niacin, well, that is NAD+. And NAD+ is very important in the citric acid cycle and metabolism in general. Pantothenic acid is a component of coenzyme A. Remember acetyl-CoA. Pyridoxine is part of amino acid metabolism. Biotin is a coenzyme for fat, glycogen, and amino acid synthesis. Okay, so not so much a mitochondrion there. Folic acid is for nucleic and amino acid metabolism, and cobalamin is for nucleic acids and RBCS. I don't actually remember what that means right now. Sorry. Anyway, the plant sources, most of these you're going to get from your whole grains and legumes. There is no plant source for cobalamin, so if you are choosing a vegan lifestyle, you might want to keep an eye on that. And it's a meat source or, a pill. Folic acid is especially interesting because this is converted to dihydrofolate in the liver, and this is used in making nucleic acids. There was a test done that showed that the presence of folic acid, or at least a large amount of it in the diet, is believed to reduce the incidence of birth defects. It is found in spinach as well as legumes and whole grains. This is a problem for diets that don't have enough green vegetables, enough whole grains, and enough legumes, specifically a white bread diet. So if someone's eating only white bread and bologna during their pregnancy, they do run a higher risk of birth defects. And yes, folic acid is advertised very highly to people who are going to become pregnant. Vitamin C. Oh, we love to take this one. And we always talk about how vitamin C is great for a cold. It's not. There's not really evidence for that. This is ascorbic acid, vitamin C. It's also used as a preservative because as an acid, it can delay the growth of bacteria. It's used in collagen synthesis, so you might want to look back to your connective tissue and see where all that collagen is. And collagen is essential in these basement membranes of epithelial cells. So those epithelial tissues, they tend to fall apart in the absence of collagen, and that falling apart looks like scurvy. So vitamin C prevents scurvy. How much vitamin C do you need? Not a lot. Your Mayo Clinic recommendation is a small glass of orange juice and a serving of strawberries, chopped red pepper, or broccoli. That's enough. And vitamin C is not fat soluble. It'll go right out of your body in your urine. So if you have one of these emergencies that has, well, a lot of vitamin C, over 1,000% of your daily recommended dose, you're just going to urinate out about 900% of your daily dose. Okay, it's 1,111%. That leaves you 1,011% to just urinate out because your body doesn't need it. Vitamin D. This is for your bone development. It's made in the body through interactions with UV light, but for those individuals who are not outside in the sun a lot, there are alternate sources of vitamin D, and you might say milk. And you'd be right. Vitamin D is found in milk, especially vitamin D enhanced milk. But if you don't like milk and you don't want to be out in the sun, you can have mushrooms because mushrooms actually are also a source of vitamin D. So I know you probably knew the milk, and now you know the mushrooms. Vitamin E, also known as tocopherol. This is found in vegetable oils, nuts, and seeds. It's a definite positive for avocados. You'll see spinaches once again on the menu. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. It is also present in the nervous system, and a deficiency will result in nervous system degeneration. There has been some stuff in the literature saying that it may or may not prevent scars, but there's been a lot of advertising that it will prevent scars. Again, the evidence is kind of lacking, but don't rub it on your face. It's not good for your skin directly. It's also present in shampoos occasionally. It doesn't hurt so long as you're not drinking the shampoo. I don't know. It's not going to really help in that form. Just eat some olives or some cooked spinach. Vitamin K. K for kale. Oh, yes. Also known as phyloquinone. You don't need to remember that for this class. It's found in green vegetables. It can also be found in tea. It's important in blood clotting, and infants are often given a vitamin K shot right after birth to enhance blood clotting and prevent hemorrhage. This is found in your most green of vegetables. So it's just an easy way of remembering K is for kale, but you can also, of course, get this in, well, spinach. So you see a lot of these are found in your green leafy vegetables. That's probably why your parents told you to eat them. And if they aren't telling you to eat them, I'm telling you to eat them. I'm also telling you kale is terrible. All right, minerals. So we're going to focus on 2 minerals here, but you can see there are a lot. Minerals cannot be synthesized in the body. Your body cannot make iron on its own, and it cannot make calcium on its own. So these are some major minerals in the body. We're going to, again, just look in at 2. One of them is iron. It's essential for hemoglobin. You may remember the blood lecture where we talked about hemoglobin. And this is also a reason that female vegetarians are often anemic. Well, why? I thought they'd get a lot of spinach. Well, if they do not have a lot of spinach, but they are vegetarian, and we're not eating a lot of whole grain, we're just avoiding red meat, this can lead to anemia. Plus, the blood loss during menstruation causes a certain loss of iron from the body. So this can lead to anemia. And yes, spinach can taste, well, almost like kale. Anyway, we also have bioavailability of iron does differ because things in tea can actually reduce your body's ability to absorb iron. So it's technically a good idea to not have a lot of tea if you are short on iron. And here we, of course, have this little video at the bottom about getting jagged metal chunks out of cereal. Turns out your body can digest metal. Remember that, not like in large quantities, don't go eating nails, but your stomach can is full of acid, and that will actually dissolve small amounts of metal, which is why when people added actual iron chunks, very small ones, to cereal and said, now you have iron in the cereal, well, technically, yes, but still, I would totally recommend spinach over eating small chunks of iron. Calcium, dark green vegetables, legumes, and of course, milk and cheese. Very high in calcium, but for those of us who are vegan, you don't have milk and cheese. So this is used in bone formation and tooth formation, blood clotting, and your nerve and muscle function. Remember that sarcoplasmic reticulum? Full of calcium. You need a lot of calcium. As you grow older, your ability to absorb calcium and your ability to excrete calcium kind of change a little, and you are going to want to focus on getting a lot more in your diet. A deficiency of calcium when you're young can lead to impaired growth. A deficiency of calcium when you're older leads to loss of bone mass, i.e. osteoporosis.